I'm not going to make you sit up here. It's fine. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. It's just the personal perspective and insight into going through this process really is one of the things that I hope you guys truly get out of today, because the only way we can learn is to learn by and through each other. Oh, yeah. Am I just not loud? There we go. So next, I'm going to have City Council member Ed Spriggs from Imperial Beach come up and talk to us about his perspective in participating in the Imperial Beach's process at looking at its vulnerabilities and tackling the science as well. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Laura. What we're going to, I think, see is that there are the idea that this is all local and each community has different challenges and different topography and different citizens and different economics. You're going to see very vividly, I think, in the wise, I think, selection of the two cities for the case studies that you're going to hear about, or that you're hearing about. And I think I'd like to praise Dr. Engman for his last remarks about this being about climate change and whether we as a society are going to really grapple with this or not. I think all of us are a little bit less optimistic about our national scene in that regard, given what we've experienced in the last 2 weeks. But that just means we have to work harder at the state level to be a great example to the country and to the world of how you realistically deal with these challenges all the way at all levels of government and society in the state of California. And I'm very, very optimistic that we will be able to do that, that we have the tools and we have the will in this state to do that for our own sake, as well as to set an example. In everything we do, we need to now, more than ever, think about the precedent effect of what we do, the example effect of what we do, because we've got to convince half the nation that this is a very important thing for all of us. I can say that because I'm political. I'm elected. I can say a lot of things, but I won't. How many of you are actually familiar with Imperial Beach, that you've been there in the last 2 or 3 years or so, and you kind of are familiar with the lay of the land? Great. I am very honored to be here, and let's see, let me get this thing to work here. I need 3 hands, really. I need my notes, the microphone, and the pointer, all at the same time. Okay. So one of the things a lot of things we need to know about Imperial Beach in terms of the setting is, first of all, it is surrounded practically on 3 sides by tidelands. This is the view looking north from the Tijuana River estuary. You can see how it borders on not only the naval outlying helicopter base, but also a good portion of the city of Imperial Beach in that sort of rectangular area there, including the homes along the coast, which have the ocean on one side and the estuary on the other. Let's see if this is a different view looking at the northern environmental vulnerability that Imperial Beach has, because it shows the San Diego Bay abutting against the northern side of Imperial Beach. I would point out that this area good parts of this area are in the flood zone, as well as along in here. This is all developed right along the ocean and all protected by revetments or seawalls. The main commercial area of Imperial Beach is in this area between Palm Avenue and Imperial Beach Boulevard. And there is a new hotel planned for this area. I'll get into that in just a second. There's an existing new 5-star hotel called the Pier South, I guess right around in here. And there are developments all along Seacoast Drive that are taking place right now with new restaurants and mixed-use buildings going up. This is probably the top of our challenge in a way for the residential challenge, because this is our tax base. A big piece of our tax base is Seacoast Drive South. But we also have a big piece of our tax base over in this area where there are very nice homes, as well as some parts of the northern section of Imperial Beach. We are a low to moderate income community, a blue-collar working class community for the most part. Our per capita income is around $44,000 a year. We do not have a lot of resources, and we've kind of been in the backwater of San Diego County for decades, and only in recent years have we begun to work ourselves out of that and begun to become a visitor-serving community with the advent of the new hotel and other projects that are developing around that. So that's kind of the backdrop for Imperial Beach and what our environmental challenges are. The fact that we've got an armored coast, 100%, and that we've got intense development behind that armoring, which also limits our options. You can see that some of our key hazards and challenges are beach erosion. This is the condition after the sand is gone, cobble. Another is nuisance flooding. And this is actually a fairly recent photograph of what happened last year. This ties in with El Nino of last year and what happened on the bayfront as well. This is flooding across the Bayshore Bikeway. And, of course, the El Nino storms and storm surges, etc., that are current parts of our experience. We have another challenge in that this is the Tijuana River watershed. And you can see, oops, wrong button. You can see right here where the Tijuana River crosses the border and enters the United States. And this is the immediate river basin that forms an integrated ecozone with the estuary itself. It's actually all estuary. And that's where Imperial Beach begins and the housing along the side there. So when the river floods, we get additional flood risks in Imperial Beach, and that was kind of what you saw in the picture I just showed you a little while ago. Now, of course, sea level rise is over and above everything that you've seen already that's been part of our experience and is only going to become a greater challenge for our community. So looking at these challenges and how we deal with them, I think first getting the adaptation options right for public discussion is very important, how we present these things, but also getting the public right, getting the public ready for the discussion is equally important. You can't just throw this stuff at people who aren't really prepared to absorb the information. And one of my roles as an elected official interested and dedicated in this area is to try to work with the scientific community, the planning community, etc., the experts, to try to translate these things into politically digestible, community digestible terms, because without being able to do that, we're really not going to get the buy-in that we need to adopt the adaptation approaches that are recommended. So we had a grant that was funded by the Coastal Conservancy and also a part of it by the San Diego Foundation that we're very grateful for that to help us identify our vulnerabilities and adaptation strategies. And and also to engage the public. And I am very grateful that I was invited to participate on the steering committee, and Danny Boudreau, Juliet Hart were members of that, as well as other people from the community with expertise and outside the community. David Revel was of Coastal Revel, or Revel Coastal, was our chief advisor, and he did a fantastic job. We had on the steering committee extremely robust, honest discussions about the different choices regarding adaptation strategies. After we identified the risks, that took quite a while, and then we had discussion about what to do, discussion after discussion about what to do about them, and then how to present to the community. We ended up with essentially 5 different adaptation strategies. Sand replenishment, large-scale sand replenishment in the sense of dunes, kind of a living shoreline approach, groins, armoring and seawalls, and planned retreat. We assumed that the same treatment would apply during that entire developed coast, or along the entire developed coast of Imperial Beach, because of the similar armoring that exists all along there. Now, trying to get 3 hands working here together. Okay. This is what we could not present without preparing the public and preparing the presentation itself. This is essentially a flood map. It's from an article in the San Diego Reader, but it fairly accurately depicts what the situation will look like in Imperial Beach in 100 years or at 2 meters of sea level rise. Whole sections essentially without adaptation or countermeasures not any longer viable. Now, we had our first meeting with the community, a workshop back in November of last year, almost exactly on this day, November 17, as a matter of fact. And at that meeting, we had a record turnout. Why? You might remember a year ago, all the talk was about El Nino. And so we decided that we would have the workshop on the basis of what to do about El Nino, what to do about coastal flooding. Sea level rise wasn't part of the billing, but it was part of the education materials and the discussion that we had when we had the record turnout for that workshop. Standing room only, we had to put people outside. We had information and education tables. This was at the Estuary Visitor Center. We had about 400 people turn out for this. And so a broad range of community residents were thinking about how do we deal with coastal flooding. We showed them pictures, the same ones that you saw and others. How does this really relate to ongoing, more frequent problems that are going to be a function of sea level rise? And so connecting those together actually, I think, helped prepare people for what we need to think about longer term. We had a second, this was early in the preparation of the report. We had a second workshop, this time in the City Council chambers in May of this year, when the report was about 90% drafted. And that is where we actually began to lay out some of the adaptation scenarios. But, and I'll have to say largely through my insistence, we did not make the flood maps a key feature of the presentation. They were in there, but they weren't something that we wanted to dwell upon. We also, I think, had to address the fact that we had a full gallery. We had a lot of interest. People now had already been through the first session where we talked about sea level rise, but in the context of El Nino. And now the question is, where do we go from here? And so the various adaptation scenarios were discussed. One of the things we had to really fight about, how much do we emphasize the 2.0 meter scenario? How much do we emphasize planned retreat at this stage? And luckily we had, as part of the presentation, and I'm sorry I don't have it here, the chart that shows how you have trigger points and actions flowing from those trigger points. And we had a similar graph that we presented. So we're not really looking at extreme solutions in the first 20 or 30 years. We're really looking at beach replenishment, continued armoring, while we gather more data, while people begin to realize that this is really happening, and then we can start looking at the more extreme solutions. I think that approach is sensible for a place like Imperial Beach, which really can't do planned retreat without a tremendous amount of public participation and discussion about, well, what is our community going to be? What's going to be left? This really leads us to where we are now and the challenges going forward. We have technical challenges because we've recently received a Coastal Commission grant to amend our LCP, and thank you, Coastal Commission, for that. But that's not enough. We have to define who we are going to be, what kind of community we're going to be going forward. Are we going to be a visitor-serving community where we're going to develop tourism and ecotourism in the context of dealing with our environmental challenges, but taking advantage of our environmental assets? Or, as many of the old line residents would like, are we going to go back to the days of being a residential community? Those days are gone. This is the hotel, the Pier South Hotel. It's there. It's a reality. It's a source of income, a source of how we can fund public benefits going forward. This is a planned new hotel at the south end of the commercial zone of Seacoast Drive. This is a wonderful project on the Bayshore Bikeway called Bikeway Village. It's becoming a reality. Imperial Beach, in other words, has already taken steps to become a tourism, ecotourism destination. There's no real turning back. So getting that into our planning process, redoing our general plan, getting the community to come together around this kind of future is all going to be part of amending the local coastal program and presenting it to the Coastal Commission and hopefully reaching an agreement on where we're going and how we deal with adaptation. This is a view from the new project. It's going to have an observation deck looking across the bikeway at the bay. This is our sandcastle competition, our Sun and Sea Festival. And that will continue to be the Imperial Beach that you'll see going forward. Thank you very much.